Good people of Earth, hold on to your butts because this is the USA Up All Night Companion. I'm Dane Michael, and we are talking about 1983's arcade comedy classic, Joysticks, directed by Greydon Clark. This aired on USA Up All Night a grand total of 4 times. The first time was in February of 1990. It aired with Lust for Freedom, a great trauma movie. It aired 3 more times after that, paired with such fare as Happy Hour and a nymphoid barbarian in Dinosaur Hell. Did not make that up. What a great movie this is, and I have reviewed this in a past life on a podcast I had called CF3. You can watch it on Project Nerd if you pull up YouTube. We had a great review episode. I have pulled some original interview footage from that with the director Greydon Clark, and we also have a tidbit from arcade hero Walter Day, who was, of course, featured in the film King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, founder of Twin Galaxies, etc., etc. I'm going to show that here because that is a wonderful interview with the director of the film himself, telling us some wonderful facts about Pac-Man, getting the money, getting the casting completed, things of that nature. We're going to play that, and then I'm going to review this film, which I just absolutely adore, so spoiler alert, it's going to get a great score probably. And we'll run it through the Trope Tracker to see if it can score even higher. So now it's time to watch that interview with Greydon Clark. This is from 2021. So from your chapter or scene, if it's like a screenplay, on Joysticks,
yes.
How did a teen sex comedy set in a video arcade wind up on your radar?
I'll tell you how. It's kind of interesting. I had made a picture called Wacko, which was a comedy horror spoof in 1980, and I really liked the picture. It was one of my favorites. So I had a test screening in San Antonio, Texas. We made the picture in 81. This test screening was in January, maybe February of 82. So I go down to San Antonio from Los Angeles, where I'm living. And I walk into the theater, and it's a multiplex, much like theaters are today. I walked into the lobby, and I look around. It's a big lobby, and I look over to the corner, and there's 10, 15 young boys standing in line. And I thought, what the hell? That's not the concession stand. What are they doing over there? So I walked over, and I saw my first video arcade game. They were standing in line with their quarters, waiting for the kid in front of them to lose so he would leave, and then they would step up, put the quarter in, and play the game. And I looked at it, and I thought, wow, look at that. That's a great idea. I can make a movie out of that. So I came back after the test screening, which went very, very well. I made a deal with a distributor to distribute Wacko. And in the meantime, I started writing a screenplay for Joysticks. And there was a couple of young guys who were kind of hanging around the office. By that time, I had my own office and so on. And they said, how did this screening go in Wacko in San Antonio? And I said, yeah. And I said, I'm going to do a movie. My next movie is going to be about a video arcade and the kids that go to it and the parents that try to close it down. So they said, oh, let me write it. Well, they weren't writers, but I thought, well, Christ, that kind of reminds me of what I did to Al Adamson 15 years earlier. So I said, okay, guys, go ahead and write it, but I'm not guaranteeing you that I will use any of it, but I'll give you $1,000 when you turn in the screenplay. You got 2 weeks. So they went off and they wrote, I told them the whole story, a group of young guys running an arcade, and the parents in the small town, are trying to close it down, and the conflict arises. So a couple of weeks later, they delivered the screenplay to me. And I was not that happy with it, but, I thanked them for it, gave them their grand. And nice guys, they have all been around the industry, working on crews and doing stuff. but I had agreed to give him screen credit, which I did. So there was a guy I was working with named Curtis Birch. He and I actually wrote the screenplay. And I went to the distributor of Wacko. And I said, he was in Salt Lake, but he had come to Los Angeles to meet me and other people. And I said to him, listen, I got a great idea for a movie. My best idea since Black Shampoo. And everybody laughed, of course. So I said, it's called Video Madness, after the Reefer Madness. It's called Video Madness, and it's an arcade, and there's going to be a lot of tits and ass, and the bad guys are the parents. And he said, that's great, Greydon, that's great. What's it going to cost to make? I'd learned a little bit by then, so I knew I could make it for $300,000. So I said to him, $600.
Nope.
He said, okay, what do you want? I'm not going to give you $600,000. I said, look, I'll make the movie. I had money by that time from Wacko, and I had the banking relationship that I knew I could go to and get a couple of $100,000 to make my movie, because I would give them my house in effect. So we made a deal where he was going to give me $200,000 upon completion of the film, $200,000 in 6 months, $200,000 in another 6 months. So that would be my $600,000. And again, the picture was costing me $3. And I, of course, had ownership of the picture. He was going to be the distributor. So I made that movie. I cast Joe Don Baker, who had been in Wacko. And Joe Don and I had become friends from Wacko, and he agreed to do it for a third what I had paid him in Wacko. And I gave him 10% of my money after I had received $600,000. Joe Don was a great guy, great to work with, wonderful friend. Can't say enough good about him.
Was he skeptical about doing this type of movie? It was kind of like different from what he would normally do.
You know something, if I won't sound too egotistical, he believed in me.
Okay.
He said he had met my wife, Jackie, and we were over, he was over to our house. We were sitting on a patio. And I told him, I said, Joe Don, listen, I'm gonna put my own money into this, which was true. And he said, oh, you don't want to do that, Greydon. I said, well, if I can get you for, I'll pay you $50,000 cash. I paid him 3 times that for Wacko. And even with Wacko, he had cut his price. I said, I'll give you $50,000 cash. I need you for 3 weeks. He said, you have a script? I said, sure, I'll give you a script. He said, I don't care. He said, listen, if you want to do it, I'll do it with you. So again, great guy. And so we made Joysticks, and it was interesting. At first I thought, well, I'll just go to a video arcade and I'll film in the evening when they're closed. Video arcades were really hot. I mean, the kids would jam in them. And they stayed open 12, 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And none of them were willing to close down because they were making a fortune.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh God, all right. So I'll go. Excuse me. I thought, oh God, I'll go on a sound stage and build the arcade, and I'll rent video games and bring them in, which I did. I had a great guy who worked with me on building the set. We found a small sound stage in Hollywood. We built the set and made the movie. It was a lot of fun to make. We shot it in 3 weeks. Most of my movies have been 3-week movies. At one time, I considered myself the best 3-week director in Hollywood.
There you go.
Unfortunately, there was a time period where they no longer made 3-week movies. Anyhow, so I finished the picture. And as I say, I shot it under the title Video Madness. And my wife, Jackie, who was in that picture and in a lot of my pictures, said she didn't really think that title made much sense. I said, well, Reefer Madness. She said, what's that? So I started kicking around different titles. And I came up with the idea, joystick, meaning double meaning, joystick.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So the distributor was down again to see me, and I was showing him on the Moviola kind of a rough cut of 10 minutes or so of the film. And I said to him, Ray, I'm changing the title from Video Madness to Joystick. He said, oh, you can't do that. Every parent in the country will forbid their kids from seeing it. I said, I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
We walked across the street to a little cafe to have lunch. And I said, listen, joystick is it. That's what it's going to be. He said, well, maybe I could call it Joysticks. He added an S to it. I thought, what the hell's the difference? Fine, call it Joystick. So he agreed to call it Joysticks. We finished the picture. And he released it to approximately 600. Now, that doesn't sound like anything today, but 600 was about a third of the country, 600 theaters, was about a third of the country, a normal release. He had test marketed it in El Paso, sorry. He had test marketed it in El Paso, Texas, and it went through the roof. The highest he had ever had for his company. His company was a distribution company called Jensen Farley out of Salt Lake. So he released it in the Southeast, and we were the #1 picture in the entire country. It was a gigantic hit. I mean, he called me on Saturday morning to report the Friday results. And he said, Greg, sit down because I'm talking to a millionaire. I thought, wow, we must have did good. So he gave me the figures for Friday. He said, if this holds up on Saturday, we're gonna each be millionaires. Because I had half of the movie and he had half of the movie after I received my 600,000. So he called me Sunday morning and he said, we did it. We did it. I don't know what he had to do with it, but anyhow. We did it. We did it. We're a gigantic hit. We're going to be the #1 picture in the entire country. I said, Jesus. So then he called me Monday and he said Sunday's figures were the highest he had ever had for a Sunday. 3 months later, I was due. He had paid me the $200,000 on delivery of the picture. And when he saw the first cut, he said, this isn't as good as Wacko. I don't think this is going to make any money. I said, Ray, don't worry. Joysticks is going to make a fortune for both of us. 3 months later, he owed me another $200,000. Now, the picture had been playing around the country. We did something like $6 million at the box office. Again, these figures don't seem like much now, but in those days, it was tremendous. My cut of that $6 million was roughly $1.5 million. That was without home video, without the rest of the country, without foreign, without all this stuff. So I was finally really going to be paid off big time. So he owed me a $200,000 payment. Well, to make a long story short, I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me because I've had a very fruitful and lucky life, and I'm a very happy fellow, but I never received another penny. So that's low-budget filmmaking. Now, eventually, I did get the rights to Joysticks back, but that's after he had sold home video, after he had sold foreign countries, after he had played a third of the country. Anyhow, I like the picture. I think it's funny, and I think it's a fun picture and so forth. No, what happened is this. During pre-production, I realized, I would not only have those wipes, but I would have to film the Pac-Man character, a game going on, because I had 4 or 5 different games. So I contacted Namco. Is it Namco? Was
Yeah.
that yeah.
Yep.
I contacted Namco, who were in Northern California. I said to them, I'm going to make a movie, and it's a video game movie and so on. I said, so I want to come up to see you guys to talk about it. They said, okay. So I hopped on a plane, flew up there, and I said to them, now, guys, I want you to know something. I'm not going to ask you for a penny. No money. I'm going to do it all for publicity. Oh, okay. Because they thought I was going to ask them for money, but they didn't know it was a cheap little $300,000 TNA movie. So I said to them, I need the Pac-Man character. I need, Space Invaders and 3 or 4 other things. And I said, and there's a contest at the end of the movie between the good guy and the bad guy, and they're playing Ms. Pac-Man. And of course, the good guy wins. Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great this year. Then I said to them, look, do you have any other game that you are about to launch that is not now in the marketplace that I can put in the movie, and I will feature it in an earlier contest? And they said, we have a great one. It's going to sweep. It's going to be bigger than Pac-Man. I said, what is it? They said, it's Satan's Hollow. And you guys have probably never heard of Satan's Hollow.
Not that one.
Tangent alert! Tangent alert!
We didn't know what Satan's Hollow was. Not the end of the world, but at the same time, we couldn't really let it go. So we decided to get some help from somebody who does know a little bit about the game. Talking about Mr. Walter Day, founder of Twin Galaxies, the star of The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, and consequently the inspiration for Mr. Litwack in the Disney Wreck-It Ralph films. Take it away, Walter.
Satan's Hollow? You know someone who's never heard of Satan's Hollow? It really came up on our radar because, I was running Twin Galaxies, and we were the crossroads of competitive gaming. We weren't part of the manufacturers. We were the gamers, okay? And so those gamers of that time, they heard of Satan's Hollow. In fact, it's very interesting. It was kind of like a worry when Satan's Hollow first came out, because Satan's Hollow came out just on the tail end of that time period when different towns have been legislating against video games. Suddenly, here's this game that's about the devil, fighting the devil, and the devil's in it, Satan's in it. And it really was a worry to us because we thought that, well, they might be able to use this as a further ploy in their, legislating against video games. So Satan's Hollow got a lot of attention back then. It was very interesting that this was a game that he came up with. It's almost like the video game industry was shooting itself in the foot, because here we are trying to win over the parents and the civic leaders by convincing them that video games are harmless. And here we have this game about the devil. The next thing that was interesting that put Satan's Hollow even more on the map is that the video game champs all over the place really embraced it as a game to beat and get the high score on. So high score wars were happening all over the place. People were going for the world record. It turned out to be a marathon game, which means it goes on for hour after hour or day after day after day. At those times when the local media is covering a video game champion beating a video game and putting a quarter in and playing that game for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, we're talking about it being Satan's Hollow that's getting all the attention. All the cameras are on Satan's Hollow. So the devil's getting his due again, and that game's getting all this extra attention because it's the game that's being used for a multi-day marathon. And the final thing that was very interesting to me is that when we finally did the official Twin Galaxies Ironman Championship in the first week of July 1985, we had I think about 10 or 11 people put a quarter in a game and try and keep that game going for as long as they could. The idea was to make it last for 100 hours, and if they could keep that game going for 100 hours, they would win $10,000 from the special insurance account that we had paid for. And someone chose Satan's Hollow. All those other games that were famous for being marathon games were now shoulder to shoulder with Satan's Hollow, believe it or not. And for me personally, for those people who have never seen Satan's Hollow and don't necessarily believe that it really existed, I think it's an intriguing game to watch I could stand there and be hypnotized and watch it get played for hours just about. And I can still hear the soundtrack. I can still hear the music. And it wasn't that easy to play. I found it a difficult game, and I could never marathon it myself. But it was definitely a champion on the game room floor that attracted enough serious competition that it even made its way into the 1985 Twin Galaxies Iron Man Championship.
Yeah, but it is in joystick. So I said, okay, fine. I'll have my earlier contest between the good guy and the bad guy be Satan's Hollow, which I did, and we used it, and then since I had the right to use the Pac-Man character, I thought, well, why not do a whoop, 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 whoop across the screen and do a little wipe from scene to scene, and it seemed to work well. People like it.
That was a great interview with Greydon Clark. I hope you agree. He's a wonderful man. Really enjoy talking to him about his work. I'm going to be brief with my scoring here because we'll be covering a few of my favorite scenes in the Trope Tracker portion, and we were able to show a few of them during the interview with Greydon as well. I'm going to start with story and screenplay. I'm going to give it a pretty generous 14 out of 20. The premise basically is that this young preppy named Jefferson is left in charge of the family arcade, and he runs into some trouble with Joe Don Baker's character, who plays an incensed parent. His daughter, played by Corinne Borer, is going there to parties at all hours of the night. He's very concerned that there is a lot of debauchery, and basically he thinks that the arcade is doubling as a whorehouse, which is hilarious. So the cast, I'm going to give a 16 out of 20. Pretty impressive score for them. I think Joe Don Baker does a great job playing the heavy in this film. It's uncharacteristic for him until you realize that he also did movies like Wacko with Greydon as well. So he became fast friends with him and was willing to work with him on whatever project Greydon had in mind for him, which is cool. We've got your three leads, Jefferson, Dorfus, and Eugene. They are not played by actors with extensive acting careers, but they do a great job here, and I have no qualms with their performance here. Lots of beautiful women in this film, including Becky LeBeau, the hot dog girl. Great little, this was her first movie, so great little appearance there, as well as people like Kim Malin and the aforementioned Corinne Borer. The women were really willing to bear all in this, and it shows. You've got wonderful turns by John Deal and John Grease as supporting characters, and overall I'm really happy with what they were able to put together for this cast. Nobody's miscast, and the proceedings are all convincing enough to this viewer. On production value, I'm going to give this a 15 out of 20. They really knocked it out of the park with the music. Again, this is, we'll talk about it more in the Trope Tracker. This is fantastic music. You'll get to hear some later. That starts things off very strong for me because the theme song Joysticks is what you hear right away when the film starts. They were able to get real licensed video games. Again, huge boost to the production value for that, having the backing from Namco, being able to put Pac-Man, Satan's Hollow, and games like that in there greatly enhances the believability of this movie and really puts you into the world of 80s arcade madness. And lastly, that brings me to the Gore and Sleaze category. I'm going to give this a 17 out of 20. There is just loads of nudity in here. It doesn't feel like that sleazy. There are some serious, like one serious love scene, which is part of like a flashback. There's also like a mud wrestling fantasy sequence. There's just a lot of great things going on here. It's all a very sophomoric endeavor, but it does really bring what you expect to see from a movie like this. 17 out of 20 all day. Okay, so coming out hot right out of the gate. Great score out of 80 from me personally. But now let's try and get it 20 more points by analyzing the Trope Tracker to see if this film cashes in on 20 potential tropes. And these are some of my favorite tropes, and that's why we have them on this list. Do we have a peeping Tom? Why, yes, we do. And that peeping Tom is played by Leif Green, who plays Eugene in the film. And just a few minutes into the film, actually, we see him peeping through the sunroof of a van into this scenario.
Oh, that was great. Holy cow.
Do we have a nerd or a geek? Well, you just saw what I saw. Leif Green is in fact playing your traditional 80s nerd, Eugene. He's even got the name, which maybe it's a throwback to Eugene from Grease, being the quintessential nerd played by Eddie Deason, who, by the way, could have played this Eugene as well quite well.
Shouldn't take too long. Which one of us do you want first?
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. For which one shall I go? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Luck of the draw.
Oh, I can...
Do we have a shower or hot tub? Well, yes. In the Peeping Tom scene, you saw that hot tub inside that van. Very wonderful innovation by Greydon Clark and his team. How about a montage? Yes, we don't have your typical, like, plot advancing montages here, but we do have some video gameplay montages, and I'm going to qualify that. So we're 4 for 4 already. What about a cheesy song? Yes, we have a cheesy title song called Joysticks, and I've got to play you the clip here. This is by Ray Nanetsky, who appears to have written and performed most of the songs in this film. They're wonderful. They're clearly written specifically for the movie. Again, Joysticks, you gotta hear this.
Video to the max, one down, 2 to go. Can't stop on a roll. Video, joystick. I need a record. Video, joystick. Please let me have a corner. Video, joystick. I got to have a corner. Totally awesome video game.
How about a horny older woman? Yes, we absolutely have that in this film. We have Joseph Rudder, played by Joan Dodden Baker's wife and the mother of Patsy Rudder in the film, just head over heels in love with the slob known as Dorfus. Let's take a look at one of those scenes of Mrs. Rudder, played by Morgan Lofting, just attacking Dorfus.
She's come to life.
Oh.
Yes. We'll meet again tonight.
Oh.
And I will have other young, strong bodies with me.
Oh.
Yes, and even some, I know you're not going to believe this, better than I.
Better than you?
Yes. Yes, there are some out there. Few, but they're there, and they'll be with me tonight.
Do we have an on-screen kill? No, so we're not going to get a perfect score here on the Trope Tracker. We were 6 for 6 prior to that. Politician or mobster? Yes, we've got a city councilman involved in the action, and I actually love that he takes a departure from what one of these heavies, so to speak, might do in a comedy like this. We're usually led to believe that all the government officials are the crooked people in this, and there was certainly the potential for him to go that way, but he gives these kids in the arcade a chance, and I like what I saw. Is there a nudie mag in this? No, again, this is one of those movies where you can see like centerfolds ripped out and posted on walls, particularly in the back office of our arcade manager. But there is not what I want to see is a full-on like Playgirl, Playboy, something like that, Hustler, Penthouse. I gotta see one of those like integrated into the movie, or at least in the background, and we don't have that here. Is there a mall scene? No, most of this action takes place inside and immediately outside of the arcade, and then one departure where they're in a city council meeting, and then some scenes at Mr. Rudder's house. Do we have skinny dipping? Yes, I'm going to revert back to that hot tub scene. That counts as the skinny dipping. We've got 8 points now. Implication that sex equals death? Nope, that's a horror movie trope not found in this one. Do we have punks? Do we ever have punks? King Vidiot, played by John Grease of Napoleon Dynamite Uncle Rico fame, plays just a wonderful villain, like side villain in this film. He's a video game lover, but he's helping the bad guys, so what's there to say? But he has a band of additional punks with him, and this is just a great 80s trope all the way. 9 points. Is there simulated farting? When I came up with the Trope Tracker, I thought of this movie specifically when I thought of the simulated farting. That and a movie that was never on USA Up All Night, which is Blazing Saddles. But this one, it's part of Dorfus's very nature to fart a lot, and so it happens throughout the movie. Take a look at this supercut here.
Dorfus, my new
Is there a creature on the loose? No, not in this movie. Suntan lotion. Although there is a pool scene at the Rudder household where Patsy is sunbathing, I did not find any suntan lotion there, so no go here. Is there a fake commercial? No, although I would have enjoyed seeing a fake commercial about the arcade. Former or future A-lister? Now you can take issue with this one all you want, but Joe Don Baker, I believe, because of his starring role in Walking Tall, which was a #1 hit in the box office at one point, I'm going to say he was a former A-lister. He had a big career in television as well, who came into this movie and was recruited specifically for his name alone. That's 11 points. Finally, is there a reference to another movie that was featured on USA Up All Night within this movie? So maybe like Greydon Clark, who directed another USA Up All Night film called Satan's Cheerleaders. Maybe there's like a poster in the background of one of his other movies. That did not occur here. We're stuck at 11 points, which is one of the highest totals that I can remember seeing for the Trope Tracker. So I'm really happy. And that actually brings up its total score to a 73, which is gorgeous. I don't know how many films are going to be able to get higher than that. Certainly something's going to be out there. There were 700 some movies on USA Up All Night. But let's compare it with other reviewers' scores. On IMDb, we have a score of 4.4 out of 10. So we're blowing that one out of the water here. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a score of 29% rotten. So we're definitely blowing that away. On Letterboxd, it has a score of 2.5 out of 5, which would equate to about 50%. And so our 73% is crushing that. And if you're dying to know if Leonard Maltin had the time of day to watch this, he certainly did. He rated it a bomb. And he writes, loud, inane ode to video games, with Meanie Baker looking as if he just spent a week on Skid Row, attempting to shut down a video arcade populated by requisite Lolitas, nerds, slobs, punks, etc. Original title, Video Madness. Thanks a lot, Leonard. Now, if you love this movie as much as I did, you're definitely going to want to check out Greydon Clark's autobiography called On the Cheap, My Life in Low-Budget Filmmaking. He writes it in the style of a screenplay, and each chapter is focused on one of his features. He'll go into budget, how he got the money to make each movie, what he did for casting, how it did at the box office, so on and so forth. Very much he was known for mortgaging his house every time he wanted to fund a feature. That's living on the edge, and you gotta appreciate a guy who was willing to do that to make a living making these entertaining little cheapies. Definitely check this out. You can buy it directly from him at GreydonClark.com, and he will autograph it for you. And then you can order some of his movies along with it. He'll autograph those as well. Joysticks is available on DVD to order from MVD. So MVD distribution, I've seen it coming up actually this very month on DVD. However, it does have an out-of-print Blu-ray, so I'm really hoping that MVD or someone else has the rights to reprint the Blu-ray, and that's what I'm holding out for. That's it for the USA Up All Night Companion. I'm Dane Michael. We'll see you next time.